What to do, what to do. This is the Brothers on Books podcast, where you find great books that will give you real value and actionable steps and have fun in the process. Please reach out to us at brothersonbooks@gmail.com for any book recommendations, or if you'd like to be a guest host for a particular book you have in mind. A great review or rating on whichever platform you're listening to this would be greatly appreciated. If you can think of any friend, family member, or coworker that might like this episode, please pass it along. For the original episodes, the OGs, please visit brothersonbooks.com and see below for 20% off all your matcha needs at Encha Matcha. They even have ceremonial grade. I am Jack Alwell, and with me, as always, is my brother Alex Alwell. Allie Bear, how you doing today?
Doing good, Jack. How you doing?
Pretty good. We're here on a Super Bowl Sunday, and yeah, big things are happening today. And our YouTube channel just went over 100 subscribers. So that's fun. So if you didn't know we had a YouTube channel, go check it out.
That it is. So, Jack, who you got in the Super Bowl?
Mm, you know, I think San Francisco has a better like overall team, but I just can't. I can't go against Patty Mahomes. I just can't. I in these big games. I know I said it last time. Like I trusted Goff more than Purdy, and I still think Goff had a better game overall. But Purdy had a couple big runs, and I don't know. I just in these big games, I go with whoever I have more confidence in the quarterback normally.
It's a good
Um,
analysis. I mean, to be
so
fair, I feel like the Lions should have won that game. It kind
yeah, it
of,
was just brutally heartbreaking.
yeah, you know, lifetime of a despair, followed by, I guess, a moment of despair. But
Yeah, it was a great season.
yeah, more playoff wins in the last month than the rest of our lives combined. So,
Yeah, it was really weird to. I'm like not used to. I mean, I'm like, okay, I can kind of see like this is fun when like your team or one of your teams is
wins,
like actually in the
good,
conference championship.
right? Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Um,
So
I guess with that said, Jack, what book are we doing?
we are reading, I believe, our third Robert Greene book, 48 Laws of Power. We have read Mastery and the 50th Law so far. So if you want to hear those discussions, go check them out. But yeah, Robert Greene, he's a very prolific author. A lot of the stories seem to overlap a bit with other books he's written. Um, I don't know. What were your initial thoughts, Allie Bear?
Uh, I guess just somewhat tangentially. I think Mastery, honestly, was probably one of our best episodes. That's just my personal opinion.
I
So
like
yeah,
I really like that book. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I obviously really like Robert Greene. I think you're right. A lot of his books, sort of like I don't know. I know we definitely have talked about Robert Kiyosaki doing this. Thomas Sowell also kind of does this. I feel like they write these books like somewhat and like through anecdotes, through like just stories and history. Uh, and I feel like he definitely takes a lot of the same stories and then just sort of copy and paste them into different books with just slightly different either meanings or just using those same stories to prove like slightly different points. Like he'll tell like in this book he'll tell stories about Napoleon and Talleyrand and how they use their machinations to gain power. But then for example, in The Art of Seduction, he'll talk about Josephine and how she manipulated Napoleon into like loving her. So a lot of the same stories can be used to tell a lot to make a lot of different points.
Yeah,
Uh,
and it's not even just across the books. It's even in like this book, he'll talk about tailoring in different aspects and one of the things I like about this book and that people might be able to just keep as like a reference book is each chapter is essentially independent. Like he doesn't really refer to any of the other chapters in any one chapter. So you can kind of use it just like to skip around and if the title interests you, you can just read that specific chapter. And I kind of like that. And one thing on the like how they use stories is and he said this quote a couple times in this book. I was trying to find it quick, but I can't seem to find it, but it was something to the effect like truth is I think rarely heard, mostly seen. So like, or maybe I flipped it, but the gist is people can give you advice, but you don't always like hear it doesn't always sink in. But like if you see like a story play out or you see it in your own life, then it sinks in more. And then you can actually like see the truth. So I think that's why some of these stories are so effective because instead of just saying like you need to be more like cutthroat or something or like you need to deceive more or like you need to stop running your mouth so much to people that don't have your interests at heart. Like instead of just saying that, like show stories and illustrate them and show how they played out poorly or positively.
Yeah, it's like using it's like a blueprint for like what you should do.
Hmm.
It's sort of like this is somewhat of a weird analogy, but you remember in math classes how you would see like equations,
Like in algebra, like
yeah, or
yeah,
anything in
yeah,
calculus.
uh-huh.
Like, yeah, it's very easy to just like look at the equation and be like, yeah, I understand that equation. I can use it. But until you actually have to apply it, it's a lot different. So I felt like it's always good to see an example of like how the equation is used to really understand, uh, I guess, what the equation means or how to work it, like how to do the problems. It's sort of the same, like you were saying, if you're not seeing the principle in action, I think it's hard to understand what you should actually be doing.
Hmm. Yeah, how to know when to use what formula at what time. Yeah. Okay, well, for the listeners, we thought we would break this episode into a bit of back and forth. Each of us selected a couple chapters to discuss. So, like a couple laws of the 48. We have not pre-told the other person what our laws are that we picked. So we might have some overlap, but and I actually think we might because that I don't know. Well, I'm really curious what laws you picked to discuss.
Well, I would say I feel like there's
Well,
a good chance
yeah,
you pick the same second law that I picked.
interesting.
Uh, I sort of yeah, sort of like what you were saying. Every chapter in this could be an individual, could be in almost individually published, like just a 10-page short story.
Hmm. So
So I don't
what's your
know.
first one, Allie Bear?
Okay, so for my first one, this was one that I picked because I felt like I had a somewhat personal investment in this. So I picked Law 5. So much depends on your reputation, guard it with your life.
Okay.
Uh,
And what made you want to discuss this law, or
well,
what stuck out about this law to
so,
you?
so for one, like I said, I've had I haven't I think I have talked about this, but I had some issues in grad school where people were, saying some things about me. And I just remember thinking when some of my professors or advisors were talking to me, how much it stuck out that the one like commonality amongst all of them was they all said to me, what people are saying about you does not sound like you. I don't believe this is happening because I know you.
Hmm.
And it's so much about just the reputation you build throughout your life and how you hold yourself that at a time someone does say whatever people are saying about you, if it does not gel with people's perception of you, it will help you. Like it will protect you essentially from accusations.
Hmm.
Um,
I'll never forget. I was so my first actuary job in 2013. One of the old investigative underwriters we had, who kind of worked with the actuaries, and he was the what would you call it? Like medication specialist. So like if when we were putting people through underwriting, he would kind of be there as an expert to talk about the medications and stuff, and like combinations. But he I'll never forget, like for some reason, he just told, and all of the actuaries there were young at the time. So we were all like between 23 and 30. And he just said, like, yeah, like you guys need to like guard your reputation with your like it's like a thing you work to build your entire life and it can be lost in like a couple minutes.
Second, right?
Yeah.
If someone
So
sees you do something like unscrupulous, their opinion of you will change. And I've also felt that about some of my friends who I've known pretty well. I've seen them do things that I view to be, sort of immoral, and I've like just lost so much respect for them, and I just honestly don't, uh, in some regards, don't care for them that much anymore. But one of the other, just to sort of show what you just said, the importance, I feel like the importance of like protecting your reputation is the way the chapters are broke down into is he gives like a quick judgment, which is just like what he's saying about, I guess, this topic. And then it's broken into observance of the law and then interpretation. So, he's giving an anecdote of when you need or like how you need to protect your reputation, and then in his like own interpretation of like what that means. And he goes through a couple different anecdotes. But the point that I was trying to show of how important this is at the end of the chapter, he gives what's referred to as a reversal. And in the reversal of every chapter, he writes sort of the antithesis of when maybe you shouldn't do like, I guess
mhm.
key to power like X or Y. And I believe this is the only chapter or the only chapter I remember where he writes that there's no reversal. Like in no situation should you never protect your reputation.
I will say near the back half of the book, there was a couple that had no reversal.
Oh, okay. So I missed that.
Um, but yeah, that there was definitely fewer laws that he said like under no circumstance you should go against it. Um, but yeah. Um,
I mean, it's sort of, I feel like for most people, the point of this is that you should just use your reputation to protect yourself. I feel like that's uh,
or maybe how do we like how do you think about I mean if you were to summarize like how do you protect your reputation? Like how what would you say?
well. So the reason it's somewhat insidious is because one of the stories he tells in this chapter is about P.T. Barnum and how Barnum essentially to become the person he is, he essentially sullied this other, I guess, carnival person, this guy named Peel. He just would continually sully his reputation. Like he would just essentially slander him, say things about his show that more or less weren't true, or then mock him. And he did this in such a way as to discredit Peel and like, bolster his own reputation and like gain his own power. So the reason it's somewhat insidious is because he says in the chapter, if you won, like once someone like starts spreading rumors about you, you either one have to refute it. Like your two options are either refute it or ignore it, right? I guess you
Hmm.
could technically just acknowledge it, but if it's not true, why would you acknowledge something that's sort of bad about you? But the point he brings up is that if you vehemently refute something, people will then, even if they don't believe it, people will sort of in the back of their mind be like, well, they're saying you did this thing, and now you're so adamantly defending yourself. There's probably people say there's probably some truth to this. Uh, just remember back to the Dershowitz book we did when he was
Huh?
talking about like all those claims, like those sexual allegations against him about being on Epstein's island, and
Uh-huh.
how, like, I mean, he essentially wrote a book to defend himself against that woman's claims.
Hmm.
But probably in the back of everyone's mind, they probably were like, well, you probably did something.
Hmm.
uh,
Well, what
so
about okay, so you said like you had the option to like not say anything, but like what if someone was spreading something that was actually positive but you didn't do? like what if someone was giving you credit for something? Like, so your reputation was taking a positive, like getting upped, but
Oh,
you didn't really do it. And this could kind of come to one of the other laws, but because one of the because when you said that, it reminded me of, I think one of the laws was like do little work but take all the credit.
credit. Yeah. I mean, he would, Greene would clearly say then you should not, you should say nothing. You should just, yeah, you should, absolutely. You should just take the credit.
Hmm.
You should allow the bolster in your own reputation. But I think you probably would say is you shouldn't lie. So you shouldn't say that like, I did do that. You should just sort of act aloof
Uh-huh.
and people will kind of then just continue to give you more credit.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
so
interesting.
I guess so back to the other point, if you're attacking someone, the other option would be to ignore it, to act like you're above it. But
Hmm.
at that point, you then will run the risk of essentially these rumors running rampant, and you then say nothing and don't respond to them, and it becomes people then, the rumors become way worse, and people will believe it if you're not denying it. So it kind of puts you in a catch-22 where you have to do something, but there's really no good option. Uh, so
Hmm.
I remember when I originally read this, I was like, well, I mean, there's no one, I don't really view myself as having any, I don't have any like competitor in the sense that some of these people had competitors, right? Like I'm not
What
in,
about pickleball competitors, Dale?
yeah, but like selling their reputation doesn't really do anything. Oh, so there's nothing really for
You
me
could,
to
you could.
do. But if you were in like big business, I feel like the point would be to just sort of, covertly like spread rumors about the people against you, just
I,
constantly.
I think I think that's what happens. I think we see that like these PR type
Yeah,
media, you know, slams and I think you see it between countries too
right. Yeah.
in conflicts. Interesting.
Uh, yeah. Then I guess you brought this up, so I'll touch on this. But the other thing, yeah, reputation of I don't know if you ever felt this, but for a long time, I remember when I would play certain people in my head, and I know other people have thought this about, like I've had other people say this to me, from for a long time when I would play other people, like just their reputation of maybe having played longer or
Hmm.
played at a higher level than me, I would inherently think that they were better, like because they had this reputation. And
Hmm.
it took for a couple of certain guys, it took a long time before like I maybe beat them once or twice where I was like, all right, these people aren't better than me. It's like why would I get so nervous when I'm playing them?
Hmm.
Uh and like I mean I've now had people walk up to me and be like, yeah, I saw your name like on the tournament list and like I decided not to play that level because I don't think we can beat you. So we dropped the level or the half
Hmm.
level.
Hmm.
I mean, that's definitely, I don't know if you ever felt that in soccer. Like, you probably, like, if you ever went up and played, when you were play like Vardar, you must have felt like, these guys are really good or like, right?
I might have had a little bit of that. Um, I actually remember more in the sense of like sometimes like I remember like as a junior or senior, some of the freshmen, like they would talk about like the upperclassmen. And I just remember them like they would give me so much space. Like so much. I remember like laughing a lot of times when I would get the ball. Like I could even have a bad touch. And they're nowhere near me. Like they were like giving me too much respect. Like all of them. Like at our high school in
Right, yeah.
particular. I remember that specifically. The Vardar thing. So Vardar was a good club out of the like the Detroit area. And yeah, I mean, I guess there was a little bit of like kind of like awe, but I don't know. I didn't really. Yeah, maybe I did feel it a little bit. And there was a couple people that I played against that did end up getting like drafted and um had pretty good careers. So um But I don't know. Yeah, yeah,
But
I definitely had some of that. Yeah.
but yeah, I remember listening to Djokovic talk about how in the beginning, uh, in the beginning, like he was so like almost intimidated by Federer and Nadal, and how it wasn't like a technical hurdle he had to get over. Like his shots didn't all of a sudden become that much better. It was like mentally getting over like beating their reputation.
Hmm.
Uh, I think that you see that with a lot of the younger tennis players, like they struggle to mentally get over Djokovic.
Hmm.
And if you read, I don't know why you would, but if you ever read Brad Gilbert's book, Winning Ugly, he talks about how like the difference, I don't remember the exact numbers, but the difference between a top 10 player or like a top 20 player and a top 50 player is not technical at all, but all mental. And
Yeah,
I
I
think
can totally
a
see that.
a lot of that just comes into how you bolster your own image, uh, of like essentially like saying that you're the best.
Yeah. Okay. I think we get to move on to the next one.
Yeah, yeah. What was
Okay, I'll go with my first one. And I didn't really pick this per se because I thought it was so important, but I thought the talking points or the questions would be better. So I picked Law 10, which is about infection, and it says avoid the unhappy and the unlucky. And the idea is that problems from being around people would arise over time, and humans are extremely susceptible to the moods, emotions, and even the ways of thinking of those with whom they spend their time. So this is a lot of people say like you become the average of the five people you spend time with, both to the good and to the bad. So if you're experiencing a lot of bad, like cut the bad people out. But if you want to have more success, maybe you need to surround yourself with more success. But I thought some of the questions around this, like, and I thought of the question like, have you ever had a person that, and you kind of mentioned it when you were talking earlier, that like there's people you just don't hang out around anymore. And is it because, like, how do you know when to cut someone off if you're spending significant time with them and like move on? Like, or are you worried that they're going to kind of infect you with their, unhappiness or negativity or, yeah.
I mean, yeah, for me, it's like sort of like what you were saying. It's when people start doing things that I don't really want to be associated with, I then just don't associate with them anymore.
Mhm.
Um,
Because
uh,
there are some people that it just seems like they just keep getting, quote unquote, unlucky or bad things just keep happening to them. And then you got to kind of ask yourself, like, do you want to be like in the way of that locomotive when it comes towards you? Like,
but
but
I feel like
uh,
I was just gonna say, I feel like at some point, probably everyone feels like bad things, uh, always happen to you. But I think a lot of it is, I mean, this is sort of unrelated, but a lot of it's like just how you hold yourself up about dealing with it. It's like, because like when, bad things are always going to happen. Like that's just the way of life. But it's like, the two options are like, do you go, oh, woe is me, like my life is so hard, my life is so bad, or or do you just sort of like take it on the chin and keep going? Uh,
mhm. Yeah, but like maybe you don't. Maybe you're good at perceiving like how things are happening to you. Like you're taking personal responsibility. You're not blaming it on a lot of external factors. But maybe one of your like best friends, starts having these things that keep, kind of happening to them. Like and they're perceiving it as being unlucky and they're being unhappy about their situation. How would you? Well, I guess how do you know if like a person's kind of like curable? Like can you maybe influence them to start being a little more positive, or how do you know when to just cut them out? Like just
oh,
cut ties. Like that's kind of the tricky part because like it's yeah, it's a tough topic, like because yeah, you're right. No one's perfect. So how do you, yeah, it's like, how do you know when to cut them off versus kind of help them or try to help them? Or do you just have to just be there and maybe things will get better?
Yeah, I don't think I have a good answer for that.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I thought I mean, there's been a couple of people that come to my mind that it just seemed like bad things kept happening to them. And at some point I really felt like I like had to ask myself, like, do I want to put myself in a position where one of these bad things might spill over and happen to me? And
yeah,
I'm just
right.
like, nah, I don't. And it was like a hard decision. And I like he brings up a lot of Talleyrand and Napoleon, but one of the things that he really commended Napoleon on was that he was a little rough around the edges, like not as cultured, I guess, as Talleyrand. I guess Talleyrand came from a very wealthy family, whereas Napoleon didn't really. And I mean, one of the things was of this chapter was like not to associate with those who share your defects. So like you want you like if you're not so outgoing, it's better to surround yourself with outgoing people because you're kind of wanting what you're lacking. So you want people to help you with your weaknesses. And one of the things about Napoleon was he wasn't as cultured, he was a little rough around the edges, but because he put himself close to Talleyrand, I think Talleyrand's kind of cultured like attributes kind of spilled over into Napoleon, and Napoleon was able to kind of take on some of those characteristics. So I kind of like that message to like if you have a defect in some way or like a weakness, like it's good to surround yourself with people that don't have that weakness.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. That's a good point.
Yeah. So yeah, so that was my first one. Um
And you ready to move on or
yeah, I think so.
okay. So my second one was actually the last chapter in the book, Law 48, assume formlessness.
Oh, okay.
I guess I'll just read the judgment. By taking a shape, by having a visible plan, you open yourself to attack instead of taking a form for your enemy to grasp. Keep yourself adaptable and on the move. Accept the fact that nothing is certain and no law is fixed. The best way to protect yourself is to be as fluid and formless as water. Never bet on stability or lasting order. Everything changes. Uh, the stories of this book were all about I mean, it was a little bit about Athens or Sparta, and then the uh, the nationalists versus the communists in China uh, during right before World War II. I guess technically in uh, the start of World War II for the Pacific. Uh, but the point is that you never. I actually also heard like Bruce Lee talk about this before too. I don't remember what his like type of martial arts was called,
Uh-huh.
but I just remember always hearing like that last phrase, "Be like water."
Yeah.
The point is to be whatever style of fighting you see come at you, you need to be able to adapt to it because there's no every the point is like essentially every style has a weakness. But if you can adapt how you fight to how your opponent fights, you can always adapt your style to maximize your opponent's like weakness. And he talks about this a lot with and I guess like one of the constant things in life, one of those phrases is like the only thing that is constant is change.
Mm-hmm.
And like how you always, as a person, you just have to be adaptable to the times. And he's saying like if you get stuck in the past, like, Formula X, like 30 years ago worked so well, like just keep doing Formula X to, infinitum.
Mm-hmm.
You'll lose because things are changing, new technology evolves. Um, you just have to be able to adapt to the times, and if you can't do that, you'll become irrelevant. And I thought it was interesting that he said in evolution, the end point of evolution is developing some type of shell. I thought that was sort of interesting. So he makes the point that like once you develop a shell, you limit yourself with so little mobility, you become just an easy target.
That
And
that
like that
actually
is
that is very related. There was one chapter that basically talked about isolation and how you should not isolate yourself
tell
because
yourself,
it was talking about
yeah,
how don't spend all your resources on building like a fortress and
right,
staying isolated.
yeah.
That's interesting. Okay. I didn't
So
remember that shell part.
yeah, so it's always about being able. I guess he puts a premium on being able to move fast, to change. And if you hear like, startup CEOs talk about that, that's one of the things. Like even in business, like when you have smaller businesses, the one thing I feel like you always hear is that you have to be able to pivot to the next new idea and to quickly get the product out of whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is you're making to maximize that. It's
Mm-hmm.
when you become like sort of bloated and slow and you almost get like bogged down in bureaucracy that you can't do
Mm-hmm.
things quickly is when these companies start having a lot of problems. And at that point, you're relying more or less on, I guess, your, quote unquote shell,
Mm-hmm.
your built up empire, uh, to like get you out of it. But the protection only lasts so long.
So how do we keep so that's yeah, that's a cool like right. So be adaptable, be flexible. How do we keep that idea in our heads with Bruce Lee also, I think said, I think he said something like, I don't fear the man that knows 1,000 kick or 10,000 kicks. I fear the man that's practiced one kick 10,000 times.
Yeah.
So like the idea of going like all in on like one idea or one skill versus staying flexible and trying to be diverse in your skill set.
Oh, that's actually an interesting point. Uh, I don't necessarily know. Hmm, I mean, like, obviously, you can be, if you're an expert in something, you can kind of pivot the knowledge.
True.
Uh,
I agree. Yeah.
but it's more, I'd say it's more about, the first point is more about being open. I would say the first point is more about being open to change. Like, you, some people become so fixated on just what they're good at that they
Hmm.
know they are not willing to change. And he even talks about this, that this becomes way more important the older you get in life, because the older you get in life, the more fixated you become on your own past and like what worked in your past.
Hmm.
So you have to be, even as you grow as you get physically grow older, you have to be more willing to seek out new ideas.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you just fixate on like what you used to do, and that probably isn't going to work. Like just, I mean, even think about like 10 years ago. I mean, I guess I wouldn't have been really in any type of industry, but you would have been.
Hmm.
And like probably in your own industry, things that were cutting edge 10 years ago are probably maybe not so cutting edge anymore, right? Or not really even probably not using the same software. Things have gone
There's yes, some softwares have stayed the same, others have been drastically changed, and there's been new softwares introduced. And there's definitely, I mean, with like regulations, like it's kind of, I mean, I don't know, I find it kind of, I mean, most people find it annoying, but like the arbitrary rules keep changing, so you constantly have to keep learning those. Um, and yeah, but yeah, you see it in like skill set, I would say a lot. I would say like investing or like the people that have saved in gold for decades and aren't even willing to like read about Bitcoin. I feel like that's not a good mentality.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, gotta be I think that's a good way to look at it. You gotta be open, or at least yeah, open to the idea and spend some
yeah,
time like researching the alternatives.
right. You have to be willing to change. Like you have to be willing to change. Uh,
Hmm.
I mean, and that's not to say that like change for the sake of change, I don't think is like just changing because you want to change. I don't think is good, but you have to be open to the idea that maybe you are wrong, or maybe
Hmm.
there is a better way to do something.
Hmm. Yeah, because I mean I don't know the percentage, but like I mean, and if you aren't willing to change, you might be in trouble, as like especially with like saving your money or investing your money, because a lot of the companies that are around now are not going to be around in,
50
I
years,
don't know,
20
15,
years,
20
right?
years. Like the turnover is pretty remarkable. So, and you might have stocks that have had great runs, that just did, it's, the history is against them basically going forward.
Right.
Um,
Like look at, 20 well, definitely 30 years ago, Netflix was a nobody and Blockbuster was king of the castle.
yeah.
And now, now no one, I don't know. I don't even, do people even still buy like DVDs? And I don't even know if people still, I don't even know if you could still buy a new VHS player.
I don't
So
think VHS players are,
yeah, right. Yeah, I
you
don't
go into
think
like an antique store
so.
now.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Like
yeah, interesting.
that technology is just totally worthless. And Blockbuster was slow to adapt the online format of mailing out movies and then the streaming services, and now they're gone.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Okay, well, I was debating between two laws to discuss for my second one. I think I'm going to go with Law 17. Keep others in suspended terror, cultivate an air of unpredictability. And I picked this because I really liked the story of Bobby Fischer playing Boris, I think it's Sosky or Spassky, sorry. And the thing was, so Spassky was from the USSR, and Fisher was going to be playing him in Iceland. And this story stuck out because when we were traveling in Iceland, we were in, I think I forget the name of
Reykjavik.
the, it was outside of Reykjavik where we saw his actual chess center. Because that's, I think, where he fled after he went a little crazier. He, I forget, but
I think it was just north, wasn't it? Wasn't it still technically right?
I don't think so. I think it was in that I remember it was a very dreary, rainy night and we had like fish in this little tavern. And but anyway, so I think Fisher was a little scared of Spassky, and Spassky had beaten him I think numerous times before this meeting in Iceland. And to shake things up, Bobby Fischer showed up like 1 minute before the allotted like free time. So like not only was he late, but I think he had like 10 minutes to show up basically, and he showed up at like minute 9. So Spassky was already kind of like on edge. Like he's like, oh, is Fischer just gonna forfeit? Am I gonna just get an easy? He's scared to show up. He's kind of he might have been getting a little cocky almost that Fisher's not even showing up. Like that's how much he believes in his skill. But then Fisher does show up and he goes against what he had typically been doing and did like some weird moves. Um, and I think people said it was even like an awful move, like it looked like on purpose,
It's
and
like the pawn sacrifice move, right?
something like. And
Yeah.
Spassky um, ended up beating him the first game, and then Fisher ended up forfeiting the second game, and then Spassky kind of thought he had just laid down and surrendered, and then Fisher comes back and starts doing some unconventional moves, ends up beating him. And then I think while he's walking out, he kind of says, like, I'm in his head, like I got him, like he can't stop me, or some like trash talk. Which I kind of find funny because I don't think of chess players like trash talking, but he like got into his head and he beat him like double digit times straight then. and Spassky kind of had like a breakdown, and I don't think he really participated much after this. Like that's how negatively it affected. Like Fisher like destroyed him mentally, and it was because Fisher at this point in time decided to go against what he had traditionally been doing, and it kind of made me think about like I guess sports a lot because like a lot of times you'll see like football teams they'll like run, 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 and it's like it's really like with a long term like framework to like fake the run and then throw it like
Bro.
long. So like
Yeah.
they're setting the other team up. So it's like getting him in this lull and then like knocking them with the unpredictable play or like throwing it to Tom Brady in the Super Bowl when he like barely ever catches a pass. Like,
Barely can run. He runs at, that optimal 5.5
yeah.
40
But I still remember, I think it was the against the Eagles in the Super
Eagles.
Bowl where
Yeah.
he like actually like dove for it. I think he dropped it.
No, yeah, he didn't catch it. I think if he
Yeah.
catches that ball, they win.
So that was pretty interesting. But I kind of like that and actually after this book I watched some Bobby Fischer is an interesting guy to listen to. He was
I
he
mean,
was go ahead.
he's psychotic.
Yeah, I mean, but he was kind of saying things like, I'm not a genius at chess. I'm just a genius that happens to play chess. And like like things like that. And I don't really like chess players. Like they're very arrogant and petty. And like this is the guy that like when he was playing Spassky, and I think I didn't mention this, but this was also to throw Spassky off like he was complaining to the referees about like the camera angles, like where the cameras were positioned in the room and like the ventilation and the lighting. Like it was all things to like not really give Spassky or like to kind of put him on edge and I don't know, not really, I guess, give him
Make him,
satisfaction. I
yeah,
don't
make
know.
him
I'm not sure.
just make him uncomfortable.
Yeah. But it was I thought that was an interesting story.
Yeah,
So I'm sure you do this a lot in pickleball. You kind of lull them in the kitchen, then you smack it.
yeah, I mean, you set up sort of like what you say. You set up specific patterns that you just keep playing until the other team can't shows that they can counter it. Otherwise, yeah, just keep doing the same thing.
Hmm.
Uh, you go, just generally a lot of times when you're at the kitchen, a lot of times you'll dink because it's a more forgiving shot. You'll dink cross court. So a lot of times, just to try and open up space, you'll alternate, not necessarily totally alternate, but like maybe semi-alternate. You'll alternate from like wide to like middle, uh, and try and sort of like, I mean, because the point is you want to like separate, you want to move the two players far enough apart that you can hit the ball between them, or you just want to hit the ball like essentially through them.
Hmm.
But the easiest way to do that is to essentially hit a shallow ball middle that usually then the person with the forehand will take, and just naturally they are going to then put that cross, and then when they do that, you then go wide. So it's like you go shallow middle to bring the person in, and then as soon as they return the ball, you then go sort of hard angle wide. So you then push them far out.
So that
So
same
then,
person that hit it, you mean?
yeah,
I got you.
but what happens is either when they go far wide, the person then that would be in front of you will either track with them, so they'll move. So then you kind of open up space behind them, or they won't. So you then open up space in the middle.
Hmm.
Just generally speaking,
Hmm.
I guess that's just the normal pattern I look to play.
Hmm. And would you say if you guys are in like a crunch situation or like if you feel like you're down, like would you say you're more likely to do something like unconventional? Like you're probably going to try something
Yes,
different.
if I'm losing, I start just trying, which is why a lot of times when you're losing, it then goes from just sort of losing to like losing badly because you start doing like wild things to try and get anything to go.
Hmm.
But if it's close, I'm not gonna. if the game's close, I don't plan on changing
Mhm.
my strategy. I mean, if we're getting beaten badly, like yeah,
Mhm.
you gotta adapt or just
But
play a lot
but
better.
do you ever like, you know, to cultivate an air of unpredictability, do you ever like say like, yo, partner, like let's just smack it as hard as we can at them, like on this point or something like
Oh,
that? No.
absolutely.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So so there it is. Like, yeah, making that creating that air of unpredictability.
Yeah, I mean, I just try and hit people in the chest like all the time.
Hmm.
Just
Yeah, I can testify to that.
and then laugh about it.
Um,
Body bag, right in the chest. Give him the cross.
Gosh. Well, that yeah, that was my last law. I don't know if there's are there any other like I mean, there were so many like trickster stories in this book of how people. I don't want. Yeah, I mean, it is manipulating people, or should I say, influencing people to do what you want them to do.
Yeah, I mean some of those like con artist stories, I'm like, okay, like how do you even know this? Like how are you
I
like
thought, did you have like a favorite con story?
I mean the one I think his name was the Yellow Kid, the guy who got I mean I want to say like I don't think these cons would ever work today, but who knows? Like the guy who got the businessman invent like he got him interested in some land deal. And then why he's getting him interested in some land deal. They get him to bet heavily on some fixed boxing match.
Oh, okay, I remember this.
And then and then everyone's in on it except the guy. And the guy puts up like 30 grand. And then the boxer fakes his death in the ring after it looks like it's fixed. And then the dude just runs away. It's sort of like the Sting. If you remember the movie The Sting, I feel like that's sort of what they like have a fake police raid and the guy just leaves all of his money because he doesn't want to go to jail. Like
Hmm.
the dude not wanting to be associated with death, thinking he's won, lost the boxing match, and the guy's now dead, just runs away and like just leaves his money.
Hmm.
And then they just take it and sort of like have a good time.
Yeah. I liked there was a story of two guys, I think from like Wyoming or Montana, that like went to Europe, bought some uncut diamonds,
Diamonds, yeah.
put them in a mine and showed it and like pitched this idea to some financiers in like San Fran or New York. And
I think
then
it
they
was JP
sent
Morgan.
was it JP Morgan? So then they send so like the financiers send their experts to the mine and like they're like, oh my God, we got like we see like these diamonds um and then they tell the financiers and they try to pitch it back to the original like guys that like, you know, we found some, but there's no guarantee that we'll find a lot. You might just want to take this money that we're offering you and you guys can be out of the deal. And they offered them a lot of money for what they knew was a setup. And they basically tricked the banksters. And because then when the banksters went to really dig, they didn't find anything. So I love that story.
Well, there was an intermediate part where they got some type of down payment of like 100 grand, which they then
Uh,
took back to Europe, bought more gems, and then
yeah.
salted the mine
Yep.
again
Yep, that's true. You're right. You're right.
to then get way more money in the eventual payout, where
Yeah.
everything was then gone.
So that was an awesome story. I mean, you're right. Like a lot of the stuff I don't think would happen just because of like the spread of information. But there was one guy that, you know, said, you know, give me like 100 grand. I'll turn it into 200 within, you know, a month or two or
30
something,
days. Yeah.
30 days. And instead of like actually putting it at risk to anything, he just like put it in a safe and then goes back to the guy that gave him the money. He's like, you know, the
That was
project.
Capone.
What's that?
That was Al Capone.
That was Al Capone. I forgot that part.
Capone was the guy that was lending the money.
Uh-huh. So okay, then he goes back to Capone and like says, "Man, you know, Al, like this
Didn't
this
work
this
out.
really went south, but we did everything we could to get your original like 100 grand back or whatever. And so he gives him the 100 grand, and Al Capone's like, "Man, you're an honest guy. You feel so like grateful to have his money back that he then gives the guy 5 grand or something."
Yeah.
And the whole idea was that the guy all the whole time the guy was only after just the 5 grand
$5 grand,
or
right?
whatever little extra he thought Al Capone would give him. So I
For
like
being honest,
for
right? Just like such a wild thing. Like just
so
like okay, but so like when I read that, I was like, all right, how many times would you try this? And the person would be like, it wouldn't work at all. Like,
yeah,
right.
sure.
But on sort of like to your point, like all it cost him was a month's uh what's the thing called at a bank? Security deposit? What are those boxes called?
Yeah, safety deposit box
Safety
or
deposit box, right.
yep.
I guess all it would cost him was a month's safety deposit box,
Uh-huh.
and that's it.
Yeah.
That's all it cost him. I
So
guess
that
if it doesn't work.
yeah, so I thought that was a creative idea. There was another story. I think this was one of the Chinese stories. There's a lot of Chinese stories in this because they have pretty long history.
That's
And
true.
but I think his last name was Liang. Um, and he was sentenced to death if he couldn't, but he said, I think like the ruler at the time said, if you bring back 1,000 arrows by like tomorrow, we won't kill you. And this was, I forgot what chapter it might have been. I think he was referring to like the cat's paw, like how you're using another individual or another item to get what you really want. And what he did was he set up this ship and put straw bales like going up, and then he rode it into enemy territory in the fog. And sure enough, what happens? The enemies start firing their bow and arrows into the ship because before he was thinking to himself, "There's no way I'm getting 1,000 arrows. Like I can't make those." So he had to think of a different way. And like to me, this is like awesome thinking. Like you just using your enemy to get what you want. Like he used their hate or like their defensiveness and got all the arrows from riding this boat through the fog with straw bales and got the arrows that way. I love that story.
I don't actually remember that story, but that is good.
Yeah. So um I don't know. Do we have, yeah, we have time. So there was another, like, what do you think of like this crush your enemy totally?
Okay, so that was going to be if we did another chapter, that was going to be the chapter I picked. Uh,
Because, yeah.
I think I well, I would be interested as to why you're bringing that up because I know why I'm bringing. I
Well,
was going to.
I'm curious what like, because like I was thinking of like Cobra Kai, like No Mercy, but I was also thinking like in terms of like Gaza and Israel. And it's kind of like this thing where they keep going back and forth, and no one's really destroying the other. And maybe that's why they keep having issues. Um,
Right.
and
So that's
because they bring up, if one doesn't eliminate, they only strengthen their fear and hatred of us. And I'm
right.
really curious what like Robert Greene would say should be done here. Because like I feel like this is one of those times.
Yeah, I think if this is from the judgment. If one ember is left alight, no matter how dimly it smolders, a fire will eventually break out. Uh, More is lost through stopping halfway than through total annihilation. The enemy will recover and will seek revenge, crush him, not only in body, but in spirit. And I think the in spirit part is also very important here. Like, I think, Hamas has to be sort of like what you were just saying. I think Hamas has to be wiped out. Because
Mhm.
if you don't totally crush them, just, I mean, it's not even what they'll probably do. This is this is their directed statement.
Mhm.
We will try and destroy Israel to the end. Like this is what their stated goal is. Like they're not hiding it. Like that's what they're going to keep doing. So
I guess if I'm like Hamas, like why or like Iran, like and it seems like Iran is backing Hamas. So why don't
it's not
what
seems it's true.
so why don't they just annihilate Israel? Like why I don't
I don't think Iran could.
you don't think so?
I don't think they have the military capabilities to do it.
Don't they have nukes or
I don't
no?
think no.
Oh. Well yeah,
Plus,
because I'm kind of thinking
plus,
it like from both sides. Like you really like if you're not gonna go all the way, why are you trying at all? Like why isn't
Hamas is definitely trying to go all the way. That's their stated goal.
but but are they really trying like it doesn't like it feels like they probably
They can't.
they
I think
you're
they
okay
are
so
trying. I
maybe
just
that
don't
is
think
the
they're
thing
capable.
but like I feel like if the Muslim world really wanted it they could make it happen. I guess is
Uh,
my
I think if the entire Muslim world, yeah, you're probably right. I think the problem there is that America then would step in.
uh-huh yeah because it's yeah I'm really curious what Robert Greene like would how he would view this conflict.
But yeah, from the microcosm of just, Israel and Gaza, I think Israel has to totally crush Hamas. Like they have to root them out, uh, destroy all their like terror tunnels, you know, kill their upper leaders and root them out and install or have them, pick someone else, do something else. But just going back and forth is just like a waste of, yeah, you're right. It just prolongs these things.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I think the point in spirit is like you have to sort of change or you have to get the people to change their essentially their ideology. Like they have to stop uh you have to stop viewing the other person or like I feel like the people in Gaza have to stop viewing Israel as like an enemy to be killed. And they kind of just have to acknowledge or they have to see them as like, I don't think Israel wants to fight, but I think at this point they have to come out guns blazing.
Hmm. It's yeah, it's really some of the beliefs on both yeah and
Both sides are so fervent.
are so yeah ingrained. Like I was even there's a guy on YouTube. I think it's like Ask. I think it's like the Ask Project. Have you seen this?
No.
Where he goes to both like Palestinians and Israelis and like ask questions from the other side. And
Okay.
like some of the beliefs are like really like I mean they're really interesting and they a lot of them say it like so matter of factly like I mean yesterday I was watching one where they're asking the Muslims what their ancestors were their ancestors Christians or Jews before Muslim and some of them are just like no they're all Muslim. And then he's like, well, how could that be? Like, it only started in like the, was it 600? I think it's like 1400 years old, I want to say, Islam.
I would say, yeah, sounds about right.
I
Five.
think that's right. So like you're either going to be like Christians and then Jews right, or just Jews. But like some of them were just very, very strong about all my ancestors were Muslim, nothing else. So there's some sort of like disconnect. Yeah, one of the stories is off, I guess. And like like one has a total different like belief system, operating system. So that's like that's tricky. Like I don't know. Um, I
No,
don't
I
know
guess
where I
that's an
was going
interesting
with that.
that's an interesting point. Like I guess the ancestors wouldn't technically have to be Christians or Jews, like you could have been something else, but I guess
Yeah,
for
I mean, one guy brought up like, well, before that, my ancestors were like Shiite. But I don't even know how. I didn't know that was actual religion. I don't think it is. I thought it's just a type of Muslim, but I don't know. But like, it was just interesting to hear what their answers were.
it's like what I mean, because you could go back. Uh, I was gonna say, like, I mean, the first Jew would technically be Abraham, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So I mean, I think Abraham is also technically the father of Islam, right? Because he had Ishmael with. I think Ishmael is like one of the. I don't know. I remember hearing that Abraham both fathered Judaism and Islam because he had Isaac on one with one woman and then Ishmael with with someone else.
Hmm.
Ishmael went on to found Islam, but before Abraham, who was there? Because there were people there, right? So like
Hmm.
you would map back like you going so far back. I don't know.
Hmm.
I guess I could see it like if you view your ancestors like I mean how many great grandparents do you really care about? Like do really matter? You're
Hmm.
going back for. I mean, I sort of see what the guy's saying. Like,
Yeah. But the guy, I mean, and those are questions like by the listeners and watchers that they want to know how I mean, and like they would also ask, Jews in like the West Bank, like, is this an occupation or is this, yeah, and then like they would also ask, like, in like Tel Aviv, like, is this part of the occupied territories? Because like a lot of the Muslims consider the whole thing occupied.
well, right. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
so.
the conflict, right? The Palestinians view like Israel is their land.
Right, but like a lot of the Jews, perhaps, if a lot of the Israelis are only view it as the West Bank and Gaza as question marks, and maybe not even that. And
Well,
Gaza
okay.
is not even there's
I
no
mean,
Jews in
right.
Gaza now.
But yes, but you know, to view Tel Aviv as, occupied, is America occupied? I mean, even making it
Right.
like more frank, is America in like 1850 occupied? It's
I
like
mean that.
the time horizon's more fair there. Like, would you? No one in 1850 would have been like, yeah, America occupied. It's like a I mean, I just think it's like silly.
Right. Yeah.
The entire world is predicated on, conquering land. Uh, it was that land wasn't even really conquered. Uh, but whatever.
Yeah. But it's just, yeah, I mean, that was kind of an interesting YouTube channel I discovered recently. So it's a good watch.
Okay, sure.
The Ask Project. Okay, Barry, you wanna any closing thoughts or?
Yeah, it was a good book. As always, Robert Greene brings it. I think this was his first book to put him on the map. Fun fact, I think this book is actually outlawed in prisons, or is outlawed in a lot of prisons. Uh, it's totally unrelated, but I think people
Yeah,
will
yeah.
like read something on Wikipedia. If you go read the Wikipedia for it, it will say something along the lines of like people were reading it and the prisoners started being like too manipulative towards each other. Uh, so I guess with that said, please reach out to us at brothersonbooks@gmail.com for any book recommendations or if you would like to be a guest host for a particular book you have in mind. A great review or rating on whichever platform you're listening to would be greatly appreciated. Lastly, if you can think of any friend, family member, or coworker that might like this episode, please pass it along. I'm Alex Alwell, and with me, Jack. As always, it's been a pleasure. Uh,
Mm,
and Jack, what book are we doing next?
I really hope this is right, but I think we're reading Why Empires
Ours,
Fail.
okay, that's what I
Or
thought
sorry,
too.
fall, not fail.
Yeah, Why Emperor's Fall.
And we will be having John Rapley on
Okay, yeah,
coming to us from South Africa. So this is going to be a very cool episode. You do not want to miss this.
should be good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
really looking forward to it. And Why Empires Fall doesn't look, it's not too long of a
Fun.
book, so.
Yeah. Big print, small pages. The the holy grail of books to pick.
Yep.
Uh,
Okay, Al, it was a good book,
all right.
and
Yeah.
we will see you next time.
All right.